Hello, and welcome to my cellar once again. This is the 222nd numbered edition. That'll be something significant about that. 222. I think there was a TV show called Room 222. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't have anything to do with this. I've been told that my volume has been low. That's because I've been speaking softly, because my dear wife of nearly 52 years, yes, next Sunday is our 52nd, is upstairs either reading or trying to sleep, and if I am my normal boisterous loud self, that might be difficult in both cases. So we'll get going. Your engaging discussion of backstories got me thinking of some of the ones for other players that I both enjoyed and disliked. For me, I think it comes down to, does this character's backstory expand storytelling options, or does it narrow storytelling options? DMs are always the ones accused of railroading, but I once played with a guy whose dense, detailed, and ridiculously long backstory effectively hijacked a few of the campaign sessions, and nobody seemed having any fun during those other than him. But I've also seen some very, very short backstories with expansive, fuzzy edges that enhance the storytelling and character development. Maybe the sweet spot is something less than a backstory, but more than nothing. The D&D version of a napkin sketch, a character sketch, maybe some other term. I share the general sense that something is out of whack here, and for me, backstory is starting to feel almost like a loaded word. Okay, I'll continue here because we have others hitting around here. You mentioned the odds of characters dying quickly in sessions of old school D&D, but I know that there's an ongoing belief by players that characters should not die. I think that's why in 5th edition it's difficult to character to actually permanently die without massive damage. I actually had a player stop playing D&D for fear of her character dying. It boggles the mind. Okay, I got another one. Then I'll address all these. I love your takes, especially for how to treat characters with backstories. Honestly, what you said isn't even thought about much anymore, but more importantly, it should be. Heroes' characters are defined by the actions you do, not some written backstory you set up beforehand. That's a well-needed take. Thank you. And yet another comment on backstories. You're exactly right about character backstories. If a dungeon master plays by the rules, especially when going to and from an adventure, those characters must travel through the wilderness and are subject to totally random encounters. Everyone knows what happens in totally random encounters. Yes, we do. One day it's a single kobold, next it's a dragon. Death cannon will happen. Okay, now that whole first page, let's deal with that all at once. There is a game that I've seen from the land down under called Duck Quest, and your entire backstory is 3 sentences. On the one point about does it land, that would allow a DM to work stuff in plausibly out of that short, suggestive backstory. On the other hand, I don't think first level pukes ought to have a backstory unless it's a sob story. I don't think you ought to be entitled to a backstory until you've made 2nd or 3rd level. That would be the way I would run it, because then you would be sitting around the campfire with your now trusted battle-scarred companions, revealing stuff about your past. That would be a wonderful place if you want to get into that. I can certainly agree with the DM that said it hinders. Yes, it does. And I don't believe that anything should be allowed that hinders the DM in his spinning or directing or hurting or ushering or coaxing or whatever phrase, whatever action is necessary. Whenever he was doing any of those things, he shouldn't be hindered by somebody's crazy backshit bullshit story. Who cares? Right? Who cares? Just shouldn't be. I like the idea that everybody's a little secretive and doesn't reveal their whole soul to the world now that they've decided to take up adventuring. Which is, if you get right down to it, both potentially lucrative, but also very repellent and repugnant to the average citizen who thinks that you should just till your 8 acres, tend to your pigs and and goats. Having a little trouble here tonight. I'm doing synonyms. Attend to your livestock and pay your taxes when the bailiff comes by. No, that's not for you. I think that it is far more plausible for a first-level adventurer to come from common stock. Hi, my dad was an ox driver. My mother made good stews. Wrestling with oxes made me big and strong. There's all the backstory you need. It's not the backstory, it's what you do should become the story. That should become the legend of your character's life. Not the sob story. I was cheated, my family was run out, and their house was burned. No, you didn't just leave the Shaolin monastery. I really like the idea of no backstory as such until second or third level, when you might be more comfortable sharing your past. Then, okay, weave as fanciful a backstory as you want, and type it out and give it to the DM, and he'll say, "Yeah, I'm not buying this. Prove that," and he'll tone it down, as should be his right. Again, knowing what would or wouldn't hinder him, he has that right. Okay. I was wondering what advice you would provide for anyone, whether novice or veteran, regarding the process of creating a homebrew campaign. What considerations would there be beyond those for creating a fictional setting in general? Well, actually, the fictional setting is the last thing, actually. Doesn't matter where the world is when you start a new campaign. Doesn't matter. What matters is this group of those people seeking to improve their lot in life, setting out on that adventure trail with these options before them. All you need is a starting point and a goal, a preliminary goal. Now, the goal can be far away. It can be close. If it's far away, you should expect there to be a lot of outdoor encounters and hardships and grueling weather and all that kind of stuff. Or you can make it close. I've always found that seismic activity is a great thing that opens up new things, clears a path into the mountains that nobody knew was there, and there's the lost city, whatever. I believe the world should grow organically out of things said and done and talked about in those first couple of short adventures. The adventures can be simple. There's a village in the forest that's being preyed upon by wolves, and they need help. And for whatever reason they're unable, and you being doughty adventurers with your swords and your rusty scythes and your old bow with the frayed bowstrings and whatever that you start out with, certainly you're enough of a you can take on a pack of wolves, or perhaps it's not wolves, maybe it's goblins, or something of this nature. But from there, as the story unfolds, as you make stuff up along the way, because the first thing is in homebrew, you cannot absolutely cannot in any way, shape, or form predict everything that's going to happen and figure out what limits it's going to have. That's simply not going to happen. Well, I mean, you can do it, but you're wasting your time. Every time you want the party to turn right, they're going to want to go left. Just get used to that idea. However, as they proceed, whether they've found a lost city that's been hidden for a long, long time, or buried, thought to have been buried under an avalanche, whatever, there's stuff that can happen, stories that can be told, facts that can be learned that end up leading, oh, these amazing little gizmos were made where? Oh, well, okay, let's go see if we can get some more of these amazing little gizmos. And bingo, you got your next adventure. You can plant hooks all along the way. As you plant a hook, you need to have you don't have to have the whole thing thought out, but you got to have a beginning of that thing, that jaunt, that side quest, whatever. You have to have at least a beginning to get into it, and then let it evolve organically as it begins to write itself. But really, the only thing you need to start is a bunch of people that want to do it. A basic statement of the majority of rules that you play with. If people were to sit down at my table today, I'd tell them I play with the original brown books. I also am working my way into AD&D, and that's kind of where I stopped. So it's a little of this and a little of that, but it's all recognizable. And then if I had house rules that went against the core canon books, I would explain them. For instance, the way I handle clerics and what they do, as opposed to what magic users do and how they do it. I would explain all that. It would probably have been explained before we sat down that first evening. You got to do a lot of explaining before you all sit down, eager smiles on your faces, pencil in hand, dice at your side, soft drink at the ready, or beer or whatever, and you're ready to roll. Considerations are, don't expect it to go the way you plan it to go, ever. When it does, you'll be pleasantly surprised, and when it doesn't, you won't be heartbroken. Your homebrew campaign will probably be more fun for you and your players after, say, a period of several months than anything you could buy, because it's yours. You've made it. You being you, the DM, you, the players, you in synergy with each other. Now, hey, I write a good adventure, and I know lots of other guys that do. Well, I know a few other guys that do. The adventures I write, I try to make generic enough that they can be dropped into somebody else's world, and I would expect them to be buffed and changed and disguised and whatever. But if it's a straight lift, that's okay too. That's why, we write them. But you can take something like that into your homebrew campaign by simply changing whatever's in there that doesn't fit the way you play, or the rules you use, or how you use what rules. Easy peasy. All right. Hey again, I am pondering about how people do things. I have to ask, when it comes to spellcasting, how do you personally resolve them? Do they just happen, or is a roll needed if necessary? Okay, I've touched on this oddly enough, here and there at odd occasions. The book says that there's somatic elements, there's material elements, there's words to be spoken that then leave your mind. Well, if it comes to, whoops, something's happening now, everybody roll for initiative, and the magic user says, I'm going to do a thus and such spell. The higher level it is, the more complex will be the somatics and the material components, the feather you got to burn, and the, whatever it is. And of course, probably the chant or incantation might be assumed, or not, as you choose, to be longer, the higher the level. So, the magic user says, well, I'm going to do so-and-so, and I use a base 10, 0 to 9, actually. 0's first and 9's last, on a 10-sider. And I say, okay, depending upon the complexity of what they say they're doing, not before, 5th, or not before whatever. And then everybody rolls. And if they roll less than 5, in this instance, it's 5. And if they roll more than 5, well, it's that more than. It's the same as if an archer carries a weapon, carries an arrow held in his hand next to the rest that it goes on and where he holds, and I don't know all the terms. If he carries it out there as opposed to having to pull one out. Okay. And whether he carries it like that, knocked, without being drawn. Those are all things I would take into consideration, and how soon that archer could shoot. If he's got it knocked, got it ready, I'm going to let him shoot whenever he rolls. Because you don't have to have it under tension. Because that's all taken care of right there. The more stuff, the higher the level, the longer it'll probably take. Now, round 2. When we've gotten the initial shock and awe of the encounter is over, etc., then again, I'll let them keep their number and probably only add a couple. Unless it's a power word or ring, well, that's all variable, and that's all DMs call. Good day from the elemental hellscape of Australia. Been really enjoying your videos, and they made me get into OSR. I started learning basic fantasy RPG. I got into D&D with 4th. The one that famously has a 30-minute fight take 3 days, and 3 days travel take 3 seconds. Yes, that one. Oh, I lost it. And on to 5e, and of late I'm so burned out on the newer editions with the push for mini-maxing multi-classing power fantasy. Also, believe it or not, been enjoying for mini-maxing. All right, excuse me, I don't have my glasses on. Trying to be vain here, it's not working. Um, have been enjoying dying a PC. Yeah, the fun in the game is the risk. Um, I'm even trying to sell mates on the game comparing to the Dark Souls video games they all like. Do you feel players are just wrapped in cotton wool and baby too much? Yes. The later editions do that, yes. And I there's never been really competitive D&D where two parties go up against each other. But oh, I really like to go up a group of these little snowflakes and melt them. What do you mean I'm dead? Well, you have no hit points and you're ash on the floor. You're dead. I can't die. Well, yeah, wrong. Anyway, has a modern D&D just lost its way? I'm also very silly, but I'm considering applying for a local council grant to start a D&D club in my area. I want to be able to do two things. One, enjoying gaming, and two, building networks to help kids and young adults. Any wisdom you could offer would be greatly valued. Oh, yeah. Right on, mate. Yeah, I think we'll get the D&D stuff out of the way first. You bet. I believe the later editions are catering to this. Oh, I can't die. And I find that curious when the movies that this generation of I can't die go and watch are increasingly bloodier and gorier and more horrible and more heads ripped off and limbs eaten and jeez, there's this dichotomy. These really realistic gory movies with blood everywhere, and oh, I can't die. I find that very curious how they can both be popular mindsets at the same time. A club. Oh, yeah. A club. When you go for your grant, point out when you apply for it. Stress the fact, especially with youngsters, role-playing helps build teamwork, self-confidence, forces critical thinking, and any number of other positive things, none of which will you be bullshitting your counsel with. They're all true. They're all true. Natural leaders arise. The kid in the corner with the hoodie, with his phone stuck to their face, pulls the hoodie back and gets into the thing. They're great for kids with low self-esteem and low self-confidence. Great. Not easy at first, but the results are astonishing. It's great socialization. It's not out vandalizing. It's not out doing drugs. It's not out having fist fights or, throwing wombats at each other or whatever people down under do to act up. They're not out punching out ruse because they're bored. Of course, some of those big kangaroos I've seen, I wouldn't get within 20. Anyway, absolutely use that pitch with your counsel, you knowing it to be true and what you can achieve with it. Great idea. Keep me posted. And if you want to converse at greater detail, let me know and we'll private message. Because I've done this before. I've helped set them up for schools. I've helped set them up for libraries. There's lots of really positive stuff. I just converted the Stranger Things D&D 5e starter set over to the 1980s Redbox rule set. Well, with a splash of AD&D mixed in. Am I crazy? No. You're absolutely not crazy. This is what good role-playing DMs can do. Take something else, make a smooth conversion, sit your players down at the table, and have a good time. Absolutely not. If you want to do the Stranger Things, then use the rule sets that you like. Use the rules that, how they define the magic or whatever. Use the ones you like because you're going to maximize your fun that way. Can you tell us what Dragon Mag issues you wrote in yourself personally? No. Everyone. Because I wrote a Dragon Rumbles in every one. But as to articles, no. I wrote in a few of the strategic reviews. I wrote under the pen name Omar Quailish. I think his most famous piece was What to Do when the Dog Ate Your Dice. What was the last issue you're involved in? Okay. I take full responsibility for the first 33. Most responsibility for the next 3. And little responsibility for the 3 after that. Because the next 3 were in layout, had been sorted, art, whatever. They had been, they're increasingly closer to ready to go. Usually had one almost ready to go when I sent the current one to the printer. I had one almost ready to go. And then 2 more in varying states. So all the first 33, varying parts of up to about 39. Did I write module materials back then? No. Nope. When Gary and them got ready to start writing the G series, I had been divorced. Periodicals had divorced from hobbies, amicably, obviously, but and I was doing other things then. Have I written any recently? Well, the Kickstarter is coming out any day now for the Curse of the Weaver Queen. I've got a half dozen others that I could publish, maybe might get published, that I've written, and a couple that are just fragments. Remember that when folks complain about and shout about Gandalf doing this or that, he was a Mayar. Okay. Yeah, so he was some otherworldly being, an angel, or whatever crap you want to put in it. And we're gonna go back to talking about Gandalf right toward the ending here. Question: are you working on any board games? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your publishing history since your return to gaming has been solely in TTRPGs. Do you have any board game ideas you'd like to pursue? No. And no. Yes, I have worked on board games in the past. I believe that you have. Yes, I have. I develop. I don't create board games. There's a significant difference, but it's really hard to explain. Basically, I take somebody else's idea and I polish it and I look for rough spots and I gloss them and buff them out and make it more saleable, which means more understandable, easier to play. Or I add stuff on to make an advanced version or something. I've done stuff like that. Silly little card game that Avalon Hill picked up from Heritage, I think, maybe had it originally, called Naval War. Yeah, it was Heritage. Yeah, the Texas guys. And Avalon Hill bought it and gave it to me, and I polished it up a little bit. And then I put a whole set of advanced rules in the back that had already been worked out in my basement over the course of several years of us playing it as a warm-up game. All right. If you okay. Insight into the game creation process, comparing the two. Okay, a board game, you set out to recreate a battle, recreate a war, recreate a skirmish. Any of those could be created if you're not trying to mimic history. You can ticket to ride, build railroad lines. Okay, and that goes back to Rail Baron. That Avalon Hill came out. We had grease pencils and we marked them on the plastic map. You have to have an idea. You have to have something that either nobody's done before that you think would be popular, or you got to have a way that you think is just light years better than the way it's been done before. Different. Well, with an RPG, you have no boundaries, no limits, no nothing. Because when that first adventure begins, you got very little idea of what's going to happen next, other than they're going to explore something you've created, how they're going to react, who the hell knows. Realistically, you can't predict. Role-playing, wide open. You've got to give them a structure, a skeleton of rules to use. Board game. If you're recreating, then you're looking for a result. Play Gettysburg. Win is the Union. Okay? They should have. Win as the Confederates. They might have. Depends on board games today. The Euro games, the Euro game styles are what's really popular, not the simulations that I grew up with here in the States. Not all the Avalon Hill, this battle, that battle, this war, that war, or the SPI for that matter. There were simulations as often as not. Some were more game-like than others. Much different. A board game is both easier and in some few ways a little more difficult to design, because a board game's got to be tight. Can't be any holes. Goes back to the old errata sheets. Everybody and their brother, including us at TSR, printed errata sheets because we found something we missed. We corrected a word. We corrected a garbling of a whole line of type, or lost a line of type. Or we answered a rules question because nobody ever thought in the development process of what would happen to a chariot if you do, it went over an 8-foot wall or whatever. You never thought anybody'd be stupid enough to try it, so you had to put in a rule to say that don't be stupid enough to try it because if you do try it, you will fail. Anyway, you got to be prepared for those. Rules cannot be made foolproof because fools are too ingenious. Live by that. Never forget it. Because it's an absolute fact. 7.5 Tim's 5e stat block. Ooh, God, I don't know that I'd want it. What layer action can he use while in the cellar? Well, anyway. No. Answer. No. But Tim did OS RPG stat block himself some shows ago. Boy, I don't remember that. He's pretty good at it. Fair. Well, pretty good or fair? Which one is it? Or did you mean fair as in just? I have to say this channel and commenters are a joy. Well, thank you. I haven't been called a joy ever, I don't believe. Yeah, man, this is a special place. I love it. Well, what's not to love about my cellar? Truly. I mean, I got a dartboard. I got a pinball machine. I got a tournament-sized pool table. I got a big TV. I got all these games. I got my pewter. What's not to love? I love it. Okay. Back to Gandalf. Gandalf now did nothing above a 5th level OD&D. That's just your opinion. No, it's not. Nothing he did couldn't have been done by a 5th level magic user. That was the thrust of the article, and that's what I supported. Nothing he did makes any case for him being any higher than 5th. It's not my opinion. Now, this person says, in his humble opinion, he'd be at least a 14th level AD&D magic user before he defeated the Balrog and at least a 16th after. Well, let's remember, we don't know how the Balrog was defeated. Now, this one got a reply. What did he actually do in the books that would give you that? It would give you an idea that he's at least 14th level by comparison. If he were, don't you think he'd just teleport? Or past the gates of Mordor? Or any number of things a high-level wizard in AD&D can do? My point. If he were. However, again, the only ambiguity in this whole thing is, how did he actually beat the Balrog? Did he beat the Balrog? Maybe he and the Balrog took each other down into mutual destruction and thus was reborn as Gandalf the White, being a Maiar, whatever those people are. Wish Tolkien didn't have such a love for vowels. Anyway, we don't know. That's a big speculation. Maybe they both consumed each other, but Gandalf, being a Maiar, one of those M guys, was reborn as Gandalf the White. He's pretty vague about how that all happened. Okay. That's all I got. Can't wait to go see Santana in 2 nights. Patreon. Please. my pity is enough. Gonna do for the mid-level. I'm gonna do an unplugged. I'm looking to do that shortly after, right around the middle of the month. And that's for all the people that have signed up so far. And we'll call that the first month. And then when July is over, then it'll be new months, new subscriptions, whatever. I'm really not sure how this thing works. And for the high level, I'm going to do a Q&A, 60-minute Q&A on Zoom. I have a Zoom channel big enough. And those people at the upper tier will be sent a link and a time. And that's what I'm going to do. So if you aren't a subscriber to the Curmudgeon, please do. If you've got the warm feeling in your heart, look at my Patreon. And hey, how'd you like that new beginning? Jim came up with that. I rather liked it. Certainly you liked it better than my mug. Dodata Govi.
Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, tight with tramp under a tree,
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.